And welcome back to part 4 of our churchyard tour from St Margaret's Churchyard in Barking. As we leave the Auburn family grave behind, we head over this way Now the inscription on the top of this box tomb has A, completely gone, and B, is covered over with moss. So all that remains is also Elizabeth Mead, wife of the above John Mead. So we know that John Mead is, or was mentioned on that stone above. Died September the 7th, 1876, aged 76 years. Thy will be done. And next to them are these two graves, which are relevant to each other. In loving memory of Watkin Lewes Williams of this parish, who departed this life the 14th of March 1858 in the 44th year of his age. Also Harriet Williams, relict of the above, that's the widow of the above, who died the 14th of January 1908, aged 91 years, deeply lamented. To the left of this stone lie 4 children of the above. Elizabeth died 29th of July 1844, aged 4 years. Harriet, 29th of February 1842, aged 9 days. James Arthur, 27th of August 1853, aged 8 months. And Henry Wetherill, 13th of November 1858, aged 10 years. Till the day breaks and the shadows flee away. And this is the grave of those children, which you can see just about blistering away, but the surname Williams and the initials on there. But there's more to this stone as well. Sacred to the memory of Watkin Lewes Williams, late of this parish, who departed this life the 31st of March 1826, aged 47 years. Also of Elizabeth, relict of the above, who died the 29th of August 1847, aged 68 years. Also in loving memory of Watkin Lewes Williams, late of Forest Gate, who departed this life the 17th of June 1902, aged 55 years. And Mary Ann, wife of the above, who died the 29th of May 1898, aged 48 years. Interred in Stratford Churchyard, and that's the churchyard of St John's, Stratford. In loving memory of William James Williams, late of Lowestoft, who passed away the 1st of January 1916, aged 71 years. Father, in thy gracious keeping, believe we now our loved ones sleeping. So that's the Williams family grave. And I'll take you to our next one, just over there. There are also these stones up on the church wall itself with their inscriptions sadly long since worn away. And for our next one we have to negotiate some bushes, because it's just behind these. Sacred to the memory of Mrs. Mary Burrell, Burrell, late of King's Lynn in the county of Norfolk. She died September the 12th, 1810, aged 73 years. Likewise of George Burrell, who departed this life on June the 31st, departed this life on the 31st of May 1840, aged 56 years. And also of Mary Ann burial, relict of the above, and she died in June 18, and I'm afraid the rest of it's gone because it's blistered away. And our next one here is cordoned off with this screening because this vault has very recently started to collapse in on itself, so we don't wish to be falling into that, do we? James Robert, the son of George and Elizabeth Marchant, who was unfortunately drowned on the 2nd of August 1811, aged 4 years and 3 months. And this is not a lucky family, this one, because also of the above said Mr. George Marchant, who was unfortunately lost at sea October the 27th, 1812, aged 35 years. Likewise of James, son of the above, who died in his infancy. Also of Mr. George Marchant, son of the above, Mr. George Marchant, and he was lost at sea December the 4th, 1826, aged 32 years. So as I say, not a lucky family. There is inscriptions on the top as well, but I can't really get to it that well to read those. And I've been told to not get too close to this one. To the memory of Elizabeth, daughter of James and Elizabeth Morgan of this town, who departed this life April the 2nd, 1819, aged 4 years. Also 4 other of their children who died in their infancy, Elizabeth and Elizabeth, Thomas and Edward. Also Mrs. Jane Morgan, grandmother of the above, who died August the 21st, and as you can see the rest of the inscription is just pretty much gone. And you've got at the bottom Elizabeth Morgan, but I can't tell you when she died because her inscription is so badly worn away. And you've got John Martin, beloved child of Frank and Elizabeth Willett, given July the 19th, 1881, taken January the 7th, 1885. And a lot of these are either very badly damaged or their inscriptions are really worn away, unfortunately. As I say, they did have a big spout of vandalism in here a few years ago. About 5 or 6 years ago there was a Nazi swastika sprayed onto one of the graves, which really peed a lot of people off, as you can imagine. And this one here, with its inscription entirely gone, but at the foot of the grave is a stone that was added later. To the memory of P. Nairne, Nairne, 11th of the 6th, 1871 to the 12th of the 11th, 1884. S.R. Nen, 7th of the 12th, 1869 to the 8th of the 12th, 1884. R. Nen, 6th of the 11th, 1841 to the 9th of the 5th, 1919. And G. Nen, 15th of the 1st, 1838 to the 16th of the 2nd, 1923. We have this one here. Sacred to the memory of Ellen. Beloved wife of George Youngman, who departed this life the 7th of October. The 7th of... It's difficult to read because the sun's come out. They're much easier to read when they're A, damp, and B, on a cloudy day. 27th of March, 1864. Aged 31 years. And bearing in mind that there's no one else mentioned on that, it's likely that he probably remarried. These ones, are sometimes called sepulchre graves, are meant to resemble shrouded bodies. And as you can see, it would have had a headstone, but has unfortunately lost that. Sacred to the memory of Mrs. Mary Morrison, wife of James Morrison, Esquire, late of Henley-on-Thames, who died the 7th of November 1841, aged 79 years. Beneath this stone her body laid. I'll greet her ashes with a tear. May heaven with blessings crown her shade, and grant that peace in vain sought here. For none that knew her need be told, a warmer heart death never made gold. Also to the memory of their son, James Morris, Esquire, of White Rose Hall, Barkingside in Essex, who died the 8th of May 1860, aged 70 years, a dutiful son and a kind and affectionate brother. Also of Mary Morrison, who died the 13th of September 1865, aged 79 years, and also of Anne Morrison, who died the 9th of April 1860 something, but it's in the process of blistering away. It looks like 1860 or 1866. Aged 77 years. And this one here, I know from my research that I've done on the churchyard, is in memory of Thomas Morgan, and there's not much really you can see of that, but he died in the 18th century, the mid 18th century. In memory of Mrs. Elizabeth Parsons, wife of Mr. James Parsons of this parish, who departed this life November the 28th, 1807, aged 26 years. Now, Mr. James Parsons of this parish is buried over there with the other Parsons that I mentioned in part 1, I believe it was, and he did marry again after this lady's death, so he's buried with his second wife. And in the burial register, it has the date of burial and childbed next to it, which means this woman died in labour or childbed fever, which we call peripheral fever. So yeah, not an uncommon thing in those days, sadly. Sacred to the memory of Joseph Leftley, who departed this life August the 15th, 1857, aged 86 years. He lived respected and died regretted. Also of Emily Leftley, wife of John Leftley, son of the above, who departed this life August the 21st, 1858, aged 25 years. Beloved wife and mother dear, a faithful friend, lie sleeping here. Also of Annie, daughter of John and Emily Leftley, who departed this life October the 3rd, 1858, aged 7 months. Also of Margaret May Leftley, wife of the above Joseph Leftley, who departed this life September the 4th, 1868, aged 70 years. Also of Eliza, the beloved wife of John Leftley Jr., who fell asleep July the 23rd, 1922, aged 68 years. Peace, perfect peace. And it's noted in the Monumental Inscriptions book that when this lady died, Eliza, the beloved wife of John Leftley Jr., that the rest of the inscription was recarved, which is why it stands out so well, bearing in mind that the first person died in 1857. And just over here, all in a row, are the Wiseman family. That one's lost its top, and the one at the far end there is completely blistered away. But we've got, in loving memory of Frederick Wiseman, who died the 22nd of January 1880, aged 9 years. Also of Anne Wiseman, mother of the above, and the beloved wife of Jacob Wiseman, who died the 16th of April 1922 in her 81st year. Gone but not forgotten. And you've got also the above named Jacob Wiseman, who died the 16th of March 1936 in his 95th year, reunited. So the Wisemans, as we will see, are a pretty long-lived family. In loving memory of Isaac Wiseman, the beloved husband of Harriet Wiseman, who entered into rest the 22nd of February 1911, aged 71 years, thy will be done. Also Harriet Wiseman, wife of the above, who died the 21st of February 1929, aged 97 years. And you've got in loving memory of Margaret Arthur, the dearly beloved wife of Walter Frederick Wiseman, who died on the 24th of September 1918, aged 77 years. Let us not be weary in well-doing. Also of Walter Frederick Wiseman, dearly beloved husband of the above, who died on the 6th of July 1947, aged 82 years. He giveth his beloved sleep. And for our next one, you are going to join me right at the back of the churchyard over there, and it is for one of my own family members, so you'll join me there. Buried within sight of the church tower. And this is an interesting one, this, because Samuel Maywood, who is the brother of my 4 times great-grandfather, he was a Quaker, and so was his wife. But why were they buried in a Church of England churchyard when there was the Quaker burying ground at North Street in Barking? If you notice here, in this section of the churchyard, someone's dumped a bed over the churchyard wall there, sorry. In this section of the churchyard there are no headstones. That's because in 1941 a bomb landed aiming for the river and the warehouses over there, and it blew apart pretty much all the gravestones that were in this part of the churchyard. But Samuel Maywood, who was mentioned in the Monumental Inscriptions book and mapped out on the map as well, he had a headstone like one of these ones, which was 6 foot tall with a footstone. Now, about 10 to 13 years ago, I knew where they were because I'd mapped them out doing the family history. I came here one day and discovered, to my absolute delight, this new stone, sacred to the memory of Samuel Maywood, 1756 to 1809. Also Joanna, wife of the above. And it's taken me a considerable length of time, and I've only found it out within the last months, where and whom this stone actually came from. The North Street Quaker Meeting House in Barking moved to Wanstead, and it's those people at the Friends Meeting House at Wanstead who had this stone placed here. And I was quite shocked because Samuel and Joanna have been gone a long time. They were big personalities in the Quaker Meeting House. Samuel lost his life helping people with cholera in London. When most people were fleeing London, him and other Quakers rode in to help people, and he caught the cholera and died. It was managed to get home, and he died at his home in Plaistow. He came from Plaistow, and he was a plumber and glazier, owned his own business. So upper working class and wealthy enough to have been able to afford a private grave. His wife, also Joanna, wife of the above, 1761 to 1843, she's buried here as well. And there were some other people in the grave as well, their grandchildren, I believe. But I was, as I say, shocked and delighted to discover this, that their memory is still honoured and that they're still remembered, even all these years afterwards. So that was a nice little surprise to the family history. And the Quakers kept very good records. In their books, it's noted that although of the faith, meaning of a Quaker, he wished to be buried alongside his parents and by his brothers and sisters. So his mother and father, Charles and Susanna, they're buried here somewhere, because it's noted that he wished to be buried next to them and buried by his brothers and sisters as well. Now, William Maywood, his brother, who's my direct grandfather ancestor, he'll be buried in this area somewhere. And Samuel, he did pretty well for himself compared to the rest of the family. William Maywood, he was an eel fisherman. Unfortunately, his wife, Martha, she was killed in an accident in 1811. And William ended his days in Barking Workhouse. He died quite some time after his brother. He was in his 70s. But most of the family, the Maywood family, were relatively poor eel fishermen. And it made me wonder, how did Samuel get to own a business? So that was looked into. He served an apprenticeship to a plumber and glazier's merchant at Plaistow. And from what I gather, there's very little records of it. It seems as if that person left him the business. So that's how Samuel Maywood came to be buried in a private grave next to his father and mother. His parents were both Church of England, but his wife was Quaker born. And when Samuel married Joanna, he converted to the Quaker faith. And it's interesting that they worshipped at the Quaker house in Plaistow and also at the Quaker house in Barking when they were in this area, because Elizabeth Fry, the lady who used to be on our £5 notes, worshipped at both places and at the same times as my ancestor. And as the Quakers really believed in equality, it's pretty much odds on that they would have spoken to Elizabeth Fry. But I'll show you now Samuel's burial entry and the entry from the Monumental Inscriptions books, which tells us about his original headstone. And also, as I did with Thomas More, the church warden, and Anne Young, I can show you a little bit of Samuel and Joanna's world of Plaistow. So that's what we're going to look into now. And firstly, for a little bit of documentary evidence on the Maywoods, Samuel and Joanna, and after that you're going to see what the Plaistow of their era, the late 18th and early 19th century, was actually like. And this is one that I found out about not too long ago, and it's one I'm going to have to pop along to the London Metropolitan Archives in Farringdon and get a copy of. And this is a declaration by Samuel Maywood of Plaistow as to the general condition of Mr. Pine's house at Plaistow and plumbers' and glaziers' work done there, dated the 28th of August 1800. And it's one I'm looking forward to getting a copy of because there may be some interesting details in it, but mostly it will give me a chance to see what Samuel Maywood's handwriting was like. And from this it tells us that he was educated and literate to a degree that he could write such things. And this is from St Margaret's burial register. And Samuel Maywood died on the 7th of January 1809. And the burial register here tells us that Samuel Maywood was buried on the 13th of January 1809, aged 53 years. And this is Joanna's burial entry. I know that Joanna died on the 4th of December 1843, aged 80 or 81, as we're going to discover in a minute, but the burial entry here tells us that she was buried on the 11th of December 1843, aged 80. And throughout the series from St Margaret's Churchyard, when I've mentioned the Monumental Inscriptions book, this is what I'm on about. This was put together by a lovely and very helpful fella who went around in the early 1930s and noted down every single tombstone, headstone, vault that still had a legible inscription on it, even noting down its exact location on a map. And we know from this that on the plan, Samuel and Joanna's grave is number 211, and this gives us a description of what their headstone was like. A headstone, plain, 6 foot high by 3 foot wide, with a footstone, and the inscription read, "In memory of Mr. Samuel Maywood, late of Plaistow in this county. He departed this life January the 7th, 1809, aged 53 years. Likewise of Thomas, son of the above, who departed this life August the 16th, 1792, aged 1 month. Also of Mary Ann Maywood, granddaughter of the above, who died December the 14th, 1817, and she was an infant. And also of Mrs. Joanna Maywood, wife of the above Mr. Samuel Maywood, who died December but I've found out she died December the 4th, 1843, aged 81. So the burial register tells us she was 80, but this document and the copy that I've seen of her death certificate tells us that she was aged 81, which is a pretty good age for those days. And this is that map that marks the exact location of their grave. And for anyone that's interested or tracing their family history at Barking, you can go to the Archives Department at Vallance House Museum, where you'll find the Monumental Inscriptions book and the map, which lists every single grave that was still legible and readable in the early 1930s. And now for what the Plaistow of their era looked like. And this is a lovely little painting from the early 19th century that shows Plaistow, which in those days was still a little rural country village. It wouldn't be till the 1850s and the coming of the railways that Plaistow would turn from a little country village in the Essex countryside. It would become industrialised with the coming of the railways and would slowly turn into the Plaistow that we know today. It looks a real rural idyll in this one. And these images I particularly love because they give us real glimpses into Samuel and Joanna's world. And this is the Quaker Friends meeting house, which was in North Street in Plaistow, where the Maywoods attended, and where, interestingly enough, Elizabeth Fry attended too. And because of the equality that was demanded between Quakers, whether they were rich or poor, they were to treat each other the same and equally. It's pretty much odds on that they would have spoken with Elizabeth Fry at some point or other, because she attended here too. And these ones I particularly love because they show the old High Street in Plaistow, where Samuel and Joanna lived. And this one is an old shop in the High Street at Plaistow, and for all we know, it could be their shop. And it was pulled down in 1881. This one here, Porch House, called Wayners Lane, now the High Street. So Plaistow High Street was originally called Wayners Lane, and this lovely looking building was pulled down in 1839. And this one, Lodge and Gate, of the willows in Old Plaistow Lane. And if you cross over the road from Plaistow Station now and look over the wall, you'll still see this little cottage in amongst all the much more modern building and how it's been built up today. So this is a sole survivor really from the old Plaistow village. And this one on the corner of Broadway and Balaam Street. And this is Dr. Dodd's house. Dr. William Dodd, is an interesting man. He was a rector, and he ended his life on the gallows for forgery. He forged a bond and was caught out for it. It was for a lot of money, a hell of a lot of money, and he was sentenced to death. Dr. Samuel Johnson helped him to get a royal pardon, but despite that royal pardon, he still ended his days at the gallows at Tyburn. And the Abbey Arms pub, the pub that many of us Plaistowians love and know, this is what it was before 1882. This is the Georgian era Abbey Arms pub, which was, as we can see from this image, pulled down in 1882, and that was pulled down and replaced with this one, the Abbey Arms that many of us love and know. And I would love to, do like to think of the concept of what Samuel and Joanna would make of Plaistow nowadays. They would not recognise the place. They'd probably be shocked and probably horrified as well, because what was in their day a little country village has now turned into a real built up modern area. And that's just a little bit of the lives of Samuel and Joanna Maywood. Well, that's Samuel and Joanna Maywood, and I do love the fact that they're buried next to his parents. It obviously meant a great deal to him and his brothers and sisters. So William, Maywood and Martha presumably will be buried around here somewhere, right at the back of the churchyard, which, given their status, really isn't surprising. The poorest of the parish used to be buried sort of tucked away further back. The more closer you were to a church, the more that grave would cost you. Yeah, that's Samuel and Joanna Maywood. I hope you found it interesting, and you're going to join me for our next and final part.